I think it started. Good evening, everybody. That was a little weird. This is our last session of the 1 Corinthians Bible study about what makes a church a church. So if you remember, if you can sort of rewind in your minds to 5 weeks ago, I said we're going to be looking at 1 Corinthians and issues in the Corinthian church to then talk about issues in the modern church. So we're going to end with where Holy Comforter is today and sort of how 1 Corinthians speaks to our sort of experience right now and where we are as a congregation. And today's sort of topic is practical issues in the church, sort of just the nuts and bolts that actually Paul talks about, which I think is really interesting. He talks about theology, he talks about worship, he talks about all sorts of really high-minded stuff, and then he just has some sort of practical advice to give. So my opening reflections describe a time when you saw a congregation with healthy behavior, or what is the single greatest thing a congregation you were a part of ever accomplished? Notice I didn't say anything bad, because we all have had bad experiences in churches, and I just don't want to go down that road. Because I have lots of gripes, but I don't want to gripe. So
I think I see congregations the most healthiest in times of crisis, where they pull together, whether it's whatever the crisis is. There's unified purpose.
Yeah.
Also, when there's celebrations, marriage, baptisms, confirmations, they get together.
Right.
I think maybe on a college campus, I went to summer school in summer at LSU, and the college campus had a very diverse population. And everybody interacted and got along. And on Sunday evening, it was a very casual service. And then afterwards, we all kind of threw a meal together. Of course, we were all college kids, so you can imagine what that meal probably looked like. But it was really lots of fun. And, lots of interaction between the people. And I think it was really healthy because nobody had the idea of my way is the one right way.
Right.
It was fun.
Right.
It was.
That's cool. If y'all maybe saw that news, there was an Episcopal priest that was murdered over the weekend. We're not quite sure.
Yeah. We don't know.
And it's been, and I've seen that kind of what you're talking about, sort of people coming together in a time of crisis, and people intentionally reaching out to one another. I did not know this priest. I shook his hand a couple times, but I didn't know him. But the people that I do know him have been sort of.
And he was from such diverse places,
right.
Even within our diocese.
Right.
And even they were saying that the Holy Spirit, some of the older members had issues with his diction and things, so he went and got help. Yep. So he probably didn't fit in quite as well, and yet they still mourn the loss of someone.
Oh, yeah.
They're still struggling with that, probably even because of some of that.
Yeah.
But that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
As you see them kind of come together from different places.
Yeah. That we can all recognize that this is a really awful thing to happen, regardless of,
It doesn't matter what the concerns were.
So, but we're going to talk about a thing that, this is unhealthy behavior that Paul's describing. So, 1 Corinthians 6. Oh, here, I'll get a couple of notes for y'all.
Just think about it.
Yeah, are these books available in a bookstore someplace?
I heard you can get them on Amazon.
We never did.
When I was a chaplain, at the Children's Hospital, there was a kid who was in there long term. And I was reading to him the book of Judges, because Judges is perfect for little boys, stabbing and wars and all this. And his mom said, "Oh my gosh, can I get Judges at Barnes and Noble?" I was like, "Oh." Yeah.
Probably so.
Okay, so 1 Corinthians 6, verses 1 through 8.
Is it First Corinthians? After John.
After John.
Okay.
Yeah.
And after Acts. Okay. I knew that.
That's all right.
I wanted to try next to the Bible. We do have Bibles at home.
It's all good. Linda, will you?
Sure. She's found it.
When any of you has a grievance against another, do you dare take it to a court before the unrighteous, instead of taking it before the saints? Do you not know that the saints will judge the world? And if the world is to be judged by you, are you incompetent to try trivial cases? Do you not know that we are to judge angels and to say nothing to of ordinary matters? If you have ordinary cases, then do you appoint as judges those who have no standing in the church? I say this to your shame. Can it be that there is no one among you wise enough to decide whether one believer or another, but a believer goes to court against a believer, and before unbelievers at that?
Keep going.
Okay. In fact, to have lawsuits at all with one another is already a defeat for you. Why not rather be wronged? Why not rather be defrauded? But you yourselves wrong and defraud, and believers at that.
Great. That's good.
Okay.
Just one sort of note, the word saints. Do y'all have saints? What do y'all have in verse 2? Do you not know that the saints will judge the world?
Oh, I thought you were talking personally. Do you have
Don't you know?
saints?
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah,
No,
saints. Don't you know that God's people?
God's people. Oh, interesting. Okay. So the Greek word is saints. And yeah, God's people is actually a good translation for that, and probably a better translation, because when we think saint, we think Francis or some big but in the New Testament, saint is just any believer, any of God's people. So don't think that these are some other folks. He's speaking to the congregation. And I'm really struck by this. It's so weird to me. Do you not know that the saints will judge the world? If the world is to be judged by you, are you incompetent to try trivial cases? Okay, wait, time out. And then, do you not know that we are to judge angels, to say nothing of ordinary matters? This doesn't really show up elsewhere in scriptures. It's not really expounded upon. My best guess is it's sort of going from that tradition of Jesus saying the meek will inherit the earth, and so these Christians who have been oppressed and persecuted, almost Paul saying, like, don't worry, your time is coming when everything will be reversed, and actually you'll be the one making the judgment call, rather than somebody making the judgment call for you. That's my best reading of it, but I could be totally wrong.
Well, in this, it looks like it's challenging. Challenging the individuals to say, if you judge it, I'm not reading or taking in that these shall judge these things, because it's don't you know that God's people ? Question mark.
Right.
Mark. There's question marks all throughout to not.
Yeah,
dictate.
Right. It's probably rhetorical. To kind of get them. Yeah. I mean, either way, I think his point gets across is that as members of the same congregation or church, you should not be suing one another. And it really does seem like there's some trivial matter, and that they have decided to go to a court outside of the congregation. And then verse 7, I think, is really key. In fact, to have lawsuits at all with one another is already a defeat for you. Why not rather be wronged? Why not rather be defrauded or cheated? And I think Paul is saying, I mean, and this is so huge in the Christian narrative, is that Jesus was crucified. Like he is wronged and cheated and defrauded. So if we are to be followers of Jesus, we should expect that of ourselves.
And accept it. Right,
exactly. And that we're really not out to win. In a sense, we're out to lose, which is very subversive and paradoxical. But I think that's what Paul's getting at, is don't always be out to try to win something from your neighbor.
Well, I also think you might think of it as sometimes it's okay you might be right, but you don't have to just put it out there. Just say, okay, it's okay. If I'm going to be right and it's going to destroy the whole church, then maybe it's just as well for me just to let that ride.
Right. Okay, I mean, and this speaks to the experience of the Episcopal Church in the last 15 years, like to a T. So it sort of nationally in the Episcopal Church, there has been unhappiness or recent unpleasantness is a sort of kind way of putting it.
Oh, that was
and actually just today, there was, so essentially the Diocese of South Carolina left the Episcopal Church, and it was all the property and the money and the buildings was tied up in courts, and it just came out today that it actually can go with the churches that left. And again, to me, then it's like, if we would have read Paul seriously, we'd have to ask ourselves, should we even be doing this? Should we even be suing one another? Because we've just taken it to a stranger rather than having any sort of shot at reconciliation in the church. Same thing in the Diocese of Fort Worth.
I was just about going to ask, isn't that the same thing that's up there?
Yeah, and
we looked at, we can talk about different places we might want to move if we retire.
Yeah.
We looked at Brownwood, and we looked up the Episcopal Church, and then we looked up another one, and we're like, oh, they're all messed up and that stuff.
Right.
I don't think I just don't know that I can do that. That's not what retirement is to me.
Right. It's just like,
Shabai's up
like
there and
dealing with church fights.
trying to be retired and trying to deal with it. And I'm just like,
it's all about money and buildings, and
it's a mess. Well, and if that one in South Carolina went through, I wonder what that's going to do for the standing.
It's power. I mean, it's individuals.
Yeah.
Wanting power is wanting to say.
Yeah. I mean,
it's kind of what some of the Anglican churches have done around.
It's just idolatry. I mean, I think.
Surely we have better things to do. I mean, really.
Well, isn't it kind of like some of the frivolous lawsuits that go?
Yes,
I mean, or like when my kids both own dogs, and so we're like, okay, they've got to be sure they're insured right and covered.
Right. Oh yeah.
In case someone comes in, I mean, they have nice dogs, but
right.
just I hate thinking that way.
Yeah.
I didn't used to think that way. We
had
an experience a long time ago.
Right.
Suddenly I learned really quick how fast it can totally destroy somebody's life.
Yeah.
We were just very fortunate ours didn't get destroyed because of it, but it could have been, and it was
big time.
It was earth shattering. But so you just have to think differently, and I think that's he's saying, let's start with the church and stop doing it to each other.
Right.
And then maybe we can stop, but
exactly.
I mean, there's so much of that goes on. It's just,
yes.
Well, it's kind of like the lady with the pit bulls that attacked somebody else's dog in their yard.
Oh.
And she was going to sue those people in their yard. It's like,
wild.
I was like, really?
Yikes.
But I mean,
yeah.
But that's what he's saying. He's just saying stop it in the church.
Right.
Would be the place to start this.
Right.
Figuring out
what's
right.
Because like we've made a commitment to one another as fellow disciples to figure this out. Mm-hmm. And of course, we also see it on congregational levels. I don't think ever taken to the degree of money to the degree of an entire diocese and money and all this sort of stuff. We know that our neighboring parish at Good Shepherd Tomball went through all this stuff, right? And it's so it's not pretty, and I think it really does damage to the parishioners and to the wider church.
There is no winner.
There is no winner. Right.
You're right.
Right.
Everyone loses.
Everyone. Yeah.
Everyone suffers, and everybody has a lot of pain.
Yeah, that one Yeah, especially, right?
You have people that are really good friends and that end up on opposite sides of these arguments, and that's never to be repaired.
And those arguments don't really affect their life as the friends were, but they became part of it, and it divided a lot of even people within this area of the Episcopal churches. And I mean, we have great friends that are over there, and we just break, they're constantly. I told them, I said, I want to go to one of the Anglican churches, but one that nobody knows me. I just want to go see what they're doing. It's different, but I don't want to go where I'm more known, because then Lord help us,
and it's
not quite what I'm looking for. But.
And I think you're right. I think everybody loses, and I think it's then both those churches are defined by who they're not, rather than who they are.
And there's a lot of people there that weren't even part of, either place. They're kind of left with, and you kind of think of the other churches you kind of think of them differently now.
Oh yeah, big time.
So it happens right here.
I need the fact that you may not know what we're talking about is probably a good thing.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to listen to all the history here.
It didn't affect Holy Comfort.
Yeah.
So.
And then look at the next bullet point there, the last one under 1 Corinthians 6. The Episcopal Church has a system of ecclesiastical courts. When you are ordained, you fall under Title IV jurisdiction, and Title IV is in our Constitution. And if you are a heretic or you commit some grave offense, they can do that. And a question: what offenses should these courts oversee, and what powers should these courts have for sentencing? And I don't know. I mean, have y'all ever sort of come across any of these things?
Does it all fall under clergy?
It's really. It's
no matter what I do, I don't have to go in front of this court.
Right. It's essentially, it's essentially just clergy misconduct.
Well, we had a priest in Dallas when I was 13 years old that was marrying people without all the proper, that were divorced.
Right. Yeah.
Without all the proper, and there was a lot of things you had to do in those days. And, the church thought he was, I think people came for him, unfortunately. That's when I learned you don't come for the priest,
right.
It pretty well devastated him, so I don't know, you think about, it wasn't like he was, I don't know.
Yeah.
Of course I was kind of young, but
well,
still.
but should that have happened? Absolutely.
I didn't think
it
should have gone to the point it did, where they took him from the church. And he still had his, he could still practice, or he could still, he could still marry people, because he married my sister like 2 years later.
And they're different levels.
Yeah.
And
like I said, I was 13, so I'm not real sure what I was ever
they're
told.
They're different penalties. There is, you can just be sort of reprimanded. You can be inhibited, which means you're still a priest. You just can't function as a priest for a certain amount of time.
He was about ready.
Right. So there are different things that, different sort of actions they can take against you.
Well, he had to leave the church.
Yeah.
So, but that's what it was over.
And really the big thing is, if you're stripped of your orders, you lose your pension. And that's honestly, that's probably the carrot that really is at the end of the stick for most clergy, is that
most people,
the pension at some point you're going to want that retirement. So I think that's actually what keeps people behaving.
Pushes a lot of people when they, pushed into early retirement things it's all about.
Yep.
So I wouldn't think you guys would be any different. You have to live after.
Right. Exactly. So just
reality.
Just keep the pension group happy. At our earlier session, we had an individual who's been on the standing committee of the diocese before and has had to actually function in this role, and be on essentially one of the judges. It's just, it needs to happen, and I think this is actually where the Episcopal Church does very well with 1 Corinthians 6, is that if somebody has done something wrong, if it's a civil offense, yes, it needs to be taken care of. But if it's not, there are some things that we can take care of in-house without, getting other people involved.
Well, and I think the Episcopal Church does do a pretty good job. I know a couple of things, but versus say some of the other churches that maybe didn't take care of things quite as openly.
Well, I also think that if you're going to have a national policy, for lack of a better word. There has to be some rules, and there have to be repercussions for breaking those rules. Yeah, and so if you're going to say, I'm going to follow those rules, and then you don't, there has to be some repercussion. Otherwise, you end up like other independent churches where, it's the Linda Berry Church of whatever it might be, and there's no governance that goes with that. And that works for some people, but there are a whole lot of people that go, I don't have any guarantee that if I move to town X, that they're going to be anything that remotely resembles what I experienced in this place.
Well, and I think in our churches we trust that you're who you're supposed to be and what we're thinking you are.
Exactly.
And that has to fall under somebody to monitor us that. And I don't think that cannot begin to fall under this congregations. They're just as too much we don't know, and that's okay. But I think that's where some of the things that have happened because those people don't have anyone overseeing them, and people go to church to trust and have faith, and but so I think that's where it's probably a really good thing is someone's overseeing.
And I always sort of make a crack. There are actually, I think, at Holy Comfort only 12 people that have to be Episcopalians. It's like the vestry, me, Deacon Bob, and the treasurer have to be Episcopalians. And everybody, you don't have to be confirmed to become a church, whatever. So technically, it really is a sort of clergy or, I would imagine, a severe case of vestry or whatever. It's just sort of interesting to remember that we do have that because it is, there is a sort of clergy centricity in the Episcopal Church that's just there. So. Okay, 1 Corinthians chapter 12. Okay, this is really long, so let's skip to verse 12. And I'll read. For just as the body is one and has many members, and all the members of the body, though many, are one body, so it is with Christ. For in the one Spirit we were all baptized into one body. Jews or Greeks, slaves or free, we were all made to drink of one Spirit. Indeed, the body does not consist of one member, but of many. If the foot would say, because I'm not a hand, I do not belong to the body, that would not make it any less a part of the body. And if the ear would say, because I'm not an eye, I do not belong to the body, that would not make it any less a part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would the hearing be? If the whole body were hearing, where would the sense of smell be? But as it is, God arranged the members in the body, each one of them as he chose. If all were a single member, where would the body be? As it is, there are many members, yet one body. The eye cannot say to the hand, I have no need of you, nor again the head to the feet, I have no need of you. On the contrary, the members of the body that seem to be the weaker are indispensable, and those members of the body that we think less honorable, we clothe with greater honor, and our less respectable members are treated with greater respect, whereas our more respectable members do not need this. But God has so arranged the body, giving the greater honor to the inferior member, that there may be no dissension within the body, but the members may have the same care for one another. If one member suffers, all suffer together with it. If one member is honored, all rejoice together with it. Now you are the body of Christ and individually members of it. And God has appointed in the church first apostles, second prophets, third teachers, then deeds of power, then gifts of healing, forms of assistance, forms of leadership, various kinds of tongues. Are all apostles? Are all prophets? Are all teachers? Do all work miracles? Do all possess gifts of healing? Do all speak in tongues? Do all interpret? But strive for the greater gifts, and I will show you a still more excellent way. I think, first of all, it's just kind of comical to think of it just like a giant eyeball walking around, or a giant ear. It's like Paul's
the ear doesn't.
Yeah, it's like Paul's really bad stab at humor.
Well, it's very clear.
Yeah,
very clear.
Right?
Somebody doesn't get that.
Right. I mean, you're like, Paul, you're actually understandable.
Yeah, a child can understand that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And if you've ever broken your toe, you know it does affect the whole body.
Right.
You may not think it's important, but just let
That's
that
a really
happen.
good point. No, it's totally true.
Yeah.
It's totally
The whole
true.
body feels it.
The whole body
Yeah.
feels it.
I mean, and we know this in the church too, that that everybody has their own gifts, and that we have to make sure that we foster an environment where those people can explore those gifts. I think it's just really important. And I also love 22, verse 22. On the contrary, the members of the body that seem to be weak are indispensable. And those members of the body that we think less honorable, we clothe with greater honor. So, of course, he's talking about private parts, like that you cover those things up. And the parts of greater honor, hand, eyes, whatever, you don't cover those up. But it's actually the private members that are the most sort of respected. I think a lot about Mike LeGrand when I think about this. Mike is the guy at the 10:30 service who sits in the wheelchair on the aisle. And that everybody on that side is greeted by Mike, and everybody speaks back to him. And I think that's really beautiful. That, here he is, he's in a wheelchair, clearly not doing well, but everybody stops to talk to him. And I think that's really, really beautiful. My first few Sundays here, I didn't know he did that. And I was giving communion. And I was like, who is talking? I didn't know what was going on. And then I finally caught on. I was like, that's like so neat that he takes that and that people respond in kind. And I think that's really beautiful. I mean, y'all sit over there on that side, so you see him all the time.
Yeah, well,
the first Sunday, even if you don't after communion,
right? Exactly.
You come by.
Yeah.
The first Sunday that I was here for communion, I was rather surprised by that.
Mm-hmm.
Back, but it was not in a bad way.
Yeah.
I was just taken aback. I think.
Yeah.
And it really is kind of impressive. And when he's not here, I notice it.
Yeah, we all do.
It's very noticeable.
We all do.
Well, and it opens people, because at church you're more open to accept that a little differently than you would at the grocery store. If there was a man sitting outside shaking people's hands and things, and so you have to always hope that if people can be open to it in their safe haven, that they'll learn to be open to it.
That trickles out then.
Speak to people
exactly.
that they see. And so that's where it really broadens our church because of it.
Yeah, but I've always loved that. I was like, man, that's the coolest thing.
Have you told them that?
I have. Yeah. I think I know I have. I probably need to do so again. But I just think it's so beautiful. It's just so cool. Okay, then Paul has an understanding of the church that differs from ours. We often think of the church as a collection of individuals, which Paul kind of sees, but Paul also sees the church as a body. And I mean, that gets back to Mike. I mean, that sort of when he's not there, we all miss it. I think that really does speak to this sort of communal corporate nature that we all feel that, and we feel one another's presence. It's not as if we are just individual sort of atoms that go in, sort of have church and then sort of walk back out to our cars. Like we really do. There should be a sort of interaction with one another. Yeah.
Well, and that's kind of what you said is we become a corporate church or whatever, program church or whatever.
Yeah.
That we're going to have to find our smaller groups that we connect to.
Yeah.
And I thought that was, I was really pleased you said that, because that is the hardest part of it. Is, well, where do I connect?
Yeah.
If we're bigger and there's so many more people. And it's true. You have to go find those smaller groups. We're never going to get so big that, like at Champion Forest, where there's humongous. The only people they know is their Sunday school class, and that's still 45 people or something. But that's the only way churches get to that next level is by people accepting it. So that's kind of what he's telling us is we are one inside there, but we've got to become to stay strong.
And it's a good point. One toe knows the next toe better than it knows the earlobe. I mean, that's okay. Everybody's necessary, but you may not know each other that well.
Right. You can't know everybody like that.
Yeah.
And I think that an overriding thought that's here too is that everyone is necessary. It's really easy to say, wow, look at that person. They can sing. They sing. They do the singing all the time. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, if there wasn't somebody taking the trash out, you know what? We'd miss that person a lot faster than the person who sings.
Right. Yeah. Totally.
The real truth about it all.
Oh, absolutely.
Trash hangs around. You'll notice that. So.
I mean, the perfect example is the parish administrator, the one who actually really runs the church. I mean, and nobody ever sees her because she's not here on Sundays, but she's really the one that makes everything go.
Yeah.
And we were without one for it was almost 2 months. I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's a very different position in a church than any place else. We had a verger many years ago in St. Dunstan's that had been there forever, and he knew everything and did everything, and nobody really knew what all he did. And then he passed away, and oh my God, lights were getting turned on, alarms were getting set. It was absolutely unbelievable how much he was doing, and he worked a full-time job most of the the years that he did it. But he just quietly made things happen, and those things just didn't happen when it was never written down. And some of that you can't even write down as the administrator. She would spend her whole day writing down everything.
Everything she did, I mean,
and it's different depending on like when y'all changed keys. Her job suddenly became really crazy, and
just all that stuff.
So but they're all important. Even the one that just turns on the lights and takes out the trash quietly.
Yeah.
It's got to get there some way.
They need a meet and greet but among the congregational people.
Yeah.
Because that's why I stay after Mass in the morning, and I know the 10:30 is coming, but you have that little time before he starts his Bible study or whatever. And that's how I've gone slowly talking. I met Sherry this past week, and actually a week before, and then she was telling me some things she does, so that's part of us stepping up too.
Yeah,
makes us stronger.
Yeah, I keep telling everybody the question you have to ask is, have we met before? And that's totally so. If you have met before, the other person can say yes. If not, it sort of takes the pressure off. So, okay, then 1 Corinthians.
Have we met before?
Yeah, exactly.
I know you're coming.
That's what I'm going to say to everybody next Sunday. Hilarious. And we won't read this whole chapter either. Paul is sort of gives his travel plans and kind of what's going on with some other ministers. But I think this is really interesting. Chapter 16, verse 1 through 4. Now, concerning the collection for the saints, you should follow the directions I gave to the churches of Galatia. On the first day of the week, each of you is to put aside and say whatever extra you earn, so that collections need not be taken when I come. And when I arrive, I will send any whom you approve with letters to take your gifts to Jerusalem. If it seems advisable that I should go also, they will accompany me. It seems that there's been some sort of famine in Jerusalem, and there's some other places he talks about this where they essentially he asked for an extra collection that will go to the brothers, the other saints in Jerusalem. Which, is not foreign to us at all. And you can see my bullet point here, the second one down. Already in the life of the church, there exists a mutual bond of affection that transcends geography. As Anglicans, we understand these bonds very well. And then what experiences have you had as Christians that transcended ordinary boundaries? I kind of asked about this. Like me, when I was in the Dominican Republic, in the Episcopal Church, and it was all in Spanish, and I knew the liturgy well enough that I knew what was going on, even though I had no earthly idea what was going on. And that there's this sort of mutual bond that that sort of overcame the sort of limitations. And I think, and Paul is recognizing this. Like, look, you speak Greek to the people in Corinth. The other Christians in Jerusalem, they're going to be speaking Aramaic. But that doesn't matter. We're all still in this thing together. Have you all had any sort of experiences like that? Lindy, we were just talking about this one, right?
Yeah.
You go to Evensong on online. How cool is that?
Well, and they just put something out there today that I think is going to be really cool. It's at thedailyoffice.org. At any rate, and all they've done, but for 10 years they've been provided morning prayer and evensong on Friday night, and they just this day put out a list of 3 missions that they're going to start supporting with things besides prayer. And they're asking all the people who are involved to begin to participate. One's in Haiti, one's an Indian tribe, and I've now forgotten the third one. But at any rate, these are people everywhere who've never met face to face, but who have concerns and joint concerns. And they're people that worship together every day, you know, all the time. So you do develop a relationship like that, which is kind of odd, you know, because I've never seen Debbie from Idaho, for an example, other than online.
Right.
So it is kind of cool.
It is kind of
Yeah.
And I think there's going to be more of that. I think there is more of that than we're aware of.
I think with the way the internet's going and things.
I mean, right now,
Yeah,
I mean,
it's going to be a totally different.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much. I mean, even like with the rodeo group that I'm doing, there's another rodeo group that does a volunteer thing, and they're collecting books right now for elementary age kids, because there are literally, which I did not know this, there's schools in Houston School District that do not have a library. That's really kind of scary. I didn't expect them to have great libraries, but I thought they had one.
Yeah.
They literally don't have one. These kids do not have any books to read. In Houston.
Really?
And
There's
see,
something really wrong with that.
there is. And see, I think that's exactly what you're saying, is that you're taking people from all over, from different walks of life, and together they're saying we are the same and we have a common purpose.
Right.
And I think that's exactly what happens online.
Yeah.
Is that
Exactly.
we're
And I think
very
online is
different
gonna really open.
and different ways of celebrating, different ways of seeing the details, but we have a common purpose.
Right.
Right.
And
then
I
it
think
leads into
it leads into things like this. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. I agree.
You know, it's
very eye-opening.
obviously it's easier for us now because we don't know exactly who's going to get it or but some legitimate stuff. So yeah, we'll get the money and Jimmy will take it. I'm pretty sure it's going to be taken care of. Back in this day, I mean, within their tribe, they could see where their money would be put to work. But this is like, I'm going to take it off, and you have no idea where it's going.
Yeah.
That had to be probably a really big,
You're right.
thing for them back then.
Yeah, big time. And my terrible math skills. My father's an artist. He's mortified at my map making skills. But here's Greece, and then here's like Turkey, and then here's Jerusalem. I mean, that's a long way from Corinth to Jerusalem. I mean, back then, because you sailed all here, you didn't really make a straight shot. So I didn't even thought about that. That's a huge sort of sign of trust and faith that
it even is really happening over there.
Well, or that it even exists.
Yeah.
I mean, if you take into the time period, I mean, they didn't know that was over there.
Yeah. That Paul's not just a sort of scam artist.
He's already been lecturing.
He's
already been lecturing them on things
Yeah.
they didn't like to hear about. I mean, now he's asking for money for somebody that you
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a really good point.
That's because Jeff and Fred did it before.
Yeah.
Paul's the only one.
Can we get an audit on this? Yeah. Is this like a thank you note? Yeah. Okay, turn over to the back. You see 12 marks of healthy church behavior from the Diocese of Texas. So just worship, of course, thoughtful, excellent, vibrant. Number 2 is an interesting one. Knows itself and moves forward. A church defines itself by its sense of values, mission, purpose, and vision, with the resulting plans for the congregation. This is interesting. The culture is one of expectation of constant movement and change, seeking God's will for its future. This awareness is grounded in theological definition and understanding.
And not many Episcopalians like that word change.
That word change is kind of
Yeah.
Fun.
Yeah. Oh man.
He loves it. He loves his church. It's growing. And I'm like, I'm working on it. I'm trying to embrace it.
But that sort of, I mean, that's so crucial. And I think
it has
too,
to grow.
Yeah. And I think defines itself by its sense of values, mission, purpose, and vision. That I think part of the reason we see churches start having interior problems is because there's no goal, there's no sort of vision set, and there's always going to be energy in a congregation, and it's all just about where you direct it, inward, outward, at each other, whatever. Invites and incorporates. I think it's interesting that Four of you around this table have been here less than a year. I mean, I just find that very fascinating.
And I what you did in the group last year.
I know, you must have run the heart, yeah. It was that we had 15 weeks or whatever it was.
Essentially it was. It was just like, I did some. That's right. Disciples, take seriously the formation of disciples, grounded in baptismal covenant. I think the fact that we have 4 concurrent Sunday school classes for a church our size is pretty wild. I mean, that's that's a lot going on. Liz's stewards, good stewardship, parishioners' time, spiritual gifts, talents, and money. Empowers, fostering a culture of empowering ministry, utilizing knowledge of person's spiritual gifts. I mean, that's what Paul was talking about, eyes, hands, whatever. Cares, responding with thoughtfulness and pastoral sensitivity to individuals. Reaches out, going outside the church walls. This is interesting. Fosters a learning culture for leaders. Understands that leaders in Christian community have a distinctive call, that they seek God's guidance and are willing to risk, lead, change well, and learn from experience. I think risk is another really interesting word for a church. I think when churches also start having problems is when they've stopped making risks.
I think change and risk go together. I think when you start to have people who say, we're going to keep it just like it's always been, we're never going to change because,
we do it so well.
It's doing well, we like it, we're going to stay just like it is, then you're not. Because it's going to change, but not the way you see it.
And really theologically, I think risk is the core of who we are. I mean, just like the disciples leaving their nets to follow this weirdo Jesus guy. I mean, talk about a risk, but that's been the whole point. Communicates. This is, inside and outside. Manages conflict, kind of what we talked about. And understands the need to be connected to the greater church.
Now this is from where? The Diocese of Texas?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Do you know Mary McGregor? She's the one. She sort of kind of created these 12.
So it's relatively new.
Mm-hmm. I think there's some things that we at Holy Comforter do well. There's some things that as we move forward, are going to be some hard learning edges. I think for all of us, of course, me included. But.
Well, like leaders are trained, expected to mentor future leaders. Episcopal Church has not been really good at that.
No,
because somebody has to stay in a job till they die.
Right, and then
be careful what you commit to.
And that creates then a culture where there is no change or risk, because we've always done this. It's so safe. And
if somebody stays in it long enough, then you have that sacred cow there. The things that you can't just, even if they step aside, you got to be real careful with some of that. And
you get very possessive about things. And it becomes, I thought this up, therefore, it's the way.
And the funny thing to me is, like, say you take a risk and it's a major flop. Well, you know what? We're in the organization that every Sunday we get a forgiveness of sin. And so it's almost like,
go for it.
Right.
You're gonna flop.
Right.
Within your family. Within your safe for what you consider to be, especially.
Yes.
And if it's not, then maybe you better start back at the beginning.
Yeah, exactly.
Refocus. But that's kind of what he's been teaching all along. Is that, stand up for that. But that's the big thing I think that got to happen as we grow into the bigger church.
Yes. Big time.
As leaders, mentoring more leaders.
Big time.
Leaders.
Well, and I think that goes with you're mentoring more leaders and you're anticipating that you're going to roll off of that.
Right.
Every volunteer organization I've ever been a part of, one of the first things that I say is, I'll do this for the time being, but I won't be here in 5 years, 10 years, whatever the time period's going to be, because I don't think that's good. I think you get that. It becomes my way, and I think that kills an organization.
It's not healthy.
It is unhealthy.
I've really tried to institute something where if you serve on the vestry, you have to roll off after 3 years, and then we're really trying to say is then you cannot come on for another 3. Even if you want to ever come back, you have to wait until a whole new crop has gone through. So that there's always rejuvenation.
And I think most positions should be
I
2
agree.
or 3 years.
I agree,
Period. Whether there's
absolutely.
anybody step up or
Oh,
not,
yeah.
somebody will always come in.
Somebody
the
will
rector.
do it. Yeah.
Except the rector. No, but in a sense, this is why rectors have sabbaticals.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Is
Well,
that you get to leave for a little bit and sort of.
Well, you burn out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
really
everybody
do.
does. And
Everybody does.
that's
Sure,
what
yeah.
happens in some of the organizations is the same leadership. Just
Yeah.
ends up
Yeah.
totally fizzling out. But yeah, the Episcopal Church has been a choice for you. You take on that position, and then if you want another one, you just
Just
take that
life.
one on too. And you just keep going until you die. So Rick and I changed over here. We're like, we're going to be very careful what we say yes to. We have got this program down. And you don't come up with any new ideas unless you want to lead it. So you're very careful because you're
We
one.
have
Yeah,
the-
that's
That's gonna be your problem.
We learned a lot.
This parish when we had the title of EYC sponsor. But we were basically the only ones. There was no clergy that was on
Yeah.
board. And then, finally after 10, 12 years, they finally listened to us to say, it's okay to have, bring in a youth minister.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we were so
Best thing that ever happened.
excited about that.
Yeah.
So many people came up to us and said, are you okay with this?
They thought we were so offended.
I went,
First, we had
This is
had a deacon come in that got ordained that actually got the youth group put on the budget.
Oh,
Boy,
yeah.
that was
Yeah.
big.
Yeah.
Suddenly, Rick's and my little bitty budget wasn't feeding these kids every
Yeah,
every
exactly.
Sunday.
It's
And
huge.
then the youth minister, oh my Lord, that was like somebody just
but
took the
it's like
weight
they're
of the
infringing on
world.
our territory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People
Yeah,
thought it's like when you have a pew you sit in all the time, and some stranger sits there. The people in the back of the church are like, I'm so sorry, but he's sitting in the pew. But I don't own that pew. It's really okay.
Your name was in on it.
We try to move around. We always sat on the front pew and we had our kids, and people thought that was our pew, and it was so funny how people got upset for us.
It's weird.
I don't even care. We sit on the second pew. It'd be us just
Look,
funny.
I'm my own chair. All y'all can fight among yourselves.
We don't ever sit in the same place. We don't
Y'all
want to.
don't. I know.
No, we don't want to.
You don't.
I do. I pretty much. do the same.
We did for
I
many
may have to
other
start
things.
moving
But
now.
I just somebody tells you.
Fix it up. So these are sort of church sizes. We call these pastoral size church, and this is how many people come on a Sunday. So this is pastoral, transitional, and program. So last Sunday there were just 160 people here. We also have, I think we got like 40 whatever people at the early service, and you're like, there are a lot of hardcore sort of good,
And don't cancel or change it.
Oh no, I love it. Yeah.
Life will change.
So
Whenever you want to attend
Depends
church,
on where you're
don't touch
Yeah.
that 8 o'clock. My mother
So
was
pastoral-
45.
pastoral size church really because it focuses around pastor. And so good example, when I started Holy Comforter, we were definitely a pastoral size church, and not for good or for ill, but like, Jimmy, what color do you want the flowers to be? How do you want the chairs to be set up? I mean, very much sort of it revolves around.
You were probably at most of the meetings that they
Yeah.
had, or most of the,
Exactly. Yeah.
everything. They waited till
Yeah, and I
I
sort
love
of ran
those kind of
everything.
churches, honestly, but they don't
No,
last very long.
no, it's a good point. There's safety and security in this church. That yes, because it's around the pastor. The pastor can do a lot of damage pretty easily, but can also do a lot of good, mainly because it's focused around this person. A program-sized church is, and these numbers are rough. They're not, so usually about 225 plus. Those churches are stable, like a pastoral-sized church, but they're stable because of the different programs, the different ministries, the groups, whatever.
The different leaders.
Different
Yes.
leadership.
There's different leadership, and that as long as the main priest, the rector, whoever, is able to sort of keep everything going, that priest can come and go and not cause major disturbance in the congregation. And really, that's my goal, personally, is to leave Holy Comforter in a place, and who knows about that number?
Right.
We don't know what that is, but to leave so that there is a place of stability, and So we're here right now in the most anxious size congregation, and that's I made the joke this morning. Any church like this is like a 15-year-old boy, right? They desperately want to drive real soon, but they don't want to pay for the gas. And so, because there's a trade-off here that it feels like you lose intimacy, that you don't, and for me too, there's no way I can have 225 intimate relationships. That's impossible. But the interesting thing is that as you get to this point, you actually gain intimacy again by sort of, and it's not just with me, it's, you know, small groups, it's other clergy, it's other leaders, it's whoever. One more thing, the interesting thing also about a transitional size church is that there are people in it, myself included, that we want it both ways. That you want the excellent programs and the consistent ministries, but you also want sort of everybody knows your name. You want cheers, but you also want that. And this is the real hump for any church, is if you can break that hump, and again, it's not exactly at that number, but if you can sort of get to that place, things really do actually become less anxious.
Well, and when St. Aidan's is pastoral for a long time, but they've now got such an influx of new that I think it's going to be a little easier transition than one that slowly went through pastoral and then slowly then it's so painful and everybody remembers it and everything. There's still so much that's coming in here that's making it a little bit new and bright, and I think a little less anxious than some churches we've seen try to do this.
I also wonder, and I only wonder this from what I've seen in business, is that there are certain styles of leadership that can be fantastic in a pastoral setting and can just be dynamite. And then there are certain people, and then there are people that cannot handle a program, and it has nothing to do with their anything. It's just how they're put together. But I've known CEOs of companies that could build a company. My Lord, they could take it to the top. But once it got there, then what to do with it? It was like, now what? You know, they didn't have a vision of what that looked and felt like. And so it really does take not only the leader, that one person, you, for an example, it takes a whole group that's willing to morph into something different, because you're going to be something different in those stages.
Yes, definitely.
Total mentality.
Well, and I think it's good when you have someone that's pastoral like Jimmy, but he's excited about the vision. So you go through the same growing pains as churches. Not all churches do. Some will hire a more programmed priest, and he'll be taking him through knowing where he's going and knowing that he's good at that. But they don't feel like they were pastored as they got there. They felt kind of deserted as they got there. And I think that's a harder, I've seen those be a lot struggle more than the ones where everybody kind of grew together. And like I said, this one's got so much new. It's kind of like when I moved out to the 1960 area as a kid, everybody was moving out here. I mean, it was 2 lanes on 1960. You know, everything was just, you know, brand new. Everybody was new at the school. There were so few kids that had been there before. There were no cliques.
We didn't know what we were doing. Families had no clue.
It was bad. And
totally.
But it was so easy.
Because everybody's in the same boat.
Everybody was
in
the
the
same
boat. And that's really
boat.
what's
And that's
happened.
kind of what's happening here a little bit. I mean, there's still a lot of people that have been here a long time, but they're excited about having the new energy. They don't seem to be hanging on to. So I think it'll go smoother. It seems to be going smoother than it has some places I've seen. I've seen some that don't make it through the transitional.
No, I think you're right. And you know, and I told the early group this also. Since I started at St. Mark's in Virginia, where I was at seminary, I've now spent my entire ministry in transitional size churches.
You have gotten to the program.
But in a sense, but I also know what it means to be anxious then, is that, you know, I know the priests that sort of freak out when you get here. It's like, man, in my short career now, I've been doing this. I understand this. So I'm not,
I think that's
I'm not
I think
out
that's
by
good.
it. So, and, you know, of course, we talk about building ad nauseum, which we won't. But you're going back to these 12 marks. I think some of the biggest sort of challenges for us is going to be number 7, cares. And again, that's making sure that, like you said, Karen, that people feel cared for, and just understanding that care looks different. And honestly, care is probably actually better, because right now, if somebody gets sick, it's me or Deacon Bob sort of, trying to get over there, which, I mean, is great. And I love doing that. But if somebody's long-term in the hospital.
Well, and Houston's such a big place. They can be downtown. They can be a lot of places, which is really hard to get to. I mean, it's just the time to park and find the hospital.
You start expanding the care teams and Stephen ministers.
Right, exactly.
And the food.
And sometimes that can be where somebody's gift really is.
Exactly. Yeah, totally.
That's not to say that the priest doesn't have that gift too.
Right.
But there can be people that really are good at care.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, nurturing and that kind of thing.
Absolutely. And say go for it. And I think that's the role of the priest then. There's a sort of line that in a pastoral sized church, the priest knows all the sheep by name. In the program sized church, the priest knows all the ranch hands by name. Which I mean, but of course, you still know the cattle, which is where this sort of gets weird. But in a sense, like they're the ones that you really focus sort of raising up.
You empower them to then be able to use their gifts and give it to somebody else. So.
Absolutely.
And pastoral care is one place that some people have such strengths.
Totally.
They need to be the ones.
Well, and I think it also may play to, for an example, Jimmy is very young. Let's say he's supposed to counsel somebody who's 94. Maybe there's someone who's 93 who could better relate to what's going on there, and so it really does provide,
or someone that's lost a parent.
Right,
that goes to talk to
absolutely.
Absolutely. Somebody
or lost a child.
I'm always struck standing at the altar, like Deacon Bob was 50 years my senior. And it's like, whoa. I mean, only in the church does this happen, which I think is beautiful. So I think that one, and I think number 10, communication is going to be really, I mean, that's one of the real crucial pieces.
The hardest.
It's the hardest thing.
Because of so much more.
It is. And in a church like this, everything can be passed by word of mouth and everybody gets it.
Or a phone call.
Right, exactly. And it's like, that's just not going to happen. Well,
and like so much stuff you had up there that's coming out. I mean, I keep saying I'm going to have to stop and put it on the calendar because I'm beginning to get mixed up. And I'm reading everything you put out.
Right, so exactly.
If I'm already mixed up, I can't imagine somebody that's trying to be part of Lent and decided that this is something they want to be, and they're trying to be due diligent, and they're getting all mixed up because they don't even know.
Well, and I think the other thing that happens is that when you have a small parish like that, then you can be responsible for getting the word out, or at least I, as a parishioner, can say, well, they didn't tell me. Right. It becomes your job. Now it becomes my job. My job is to find out. You present it out there, and I have to reach out and take it. And if I don't reach out and take it, some of that falls to me as you begin to grow.
Totally.
Because if you've got 250, 300 people showing up on Sunday, there's no way that a staff can individually spoon feed everybody. So if you're going to belong to a larger church, that just goes with it. You're going to have to reach out and take what you need.
Well, and now it depends on the age group as to how they get their messages or how they get their information,
Yes.
Like my mom, you're not going to text her or email her, her generation is just not really into that. But so she relies on the newsletter coming and she relies on some of that stuff.
Sign up sheets.
And or being in that church leaflet or whatever. But I mean, she relies on that older, but then you have the ones, Rick and I are working on getting into all this. He's better than I am on the emails and the Facebook thing. And then you have the young ones that, unless it's on Facebook or something, just pretty much, they don't even read emails.
You're totally right. I'm communicating. I think I can. It's either 4 or 5 generations at the same time.
Right, and it's very different.
And also, just so y'all know, I know who opens all the Holy Comforter emails. Like I can actually go through and see, which is really interesting.
Not that doesn't.
Right, exactly. But
but it's kind of fascinating.
It is fascinating.
Doesn't read it. That even kind of knows how or has an email address, but obviously that's not how they're going to get their information.
Yeah.
The weekly emails have actually really good. It's almost 2/3 of people open it, which is actually really high.
Very high.
The monthly newsletter is abysmal. I think it's mainly because, I'm not going to open it. If I was a parishioner, I would not open it and read through everything. I would just wait for the weekly sort of information to come out.
See, now I read through it.
That's good. And this is why we still mail a bunch.
Because I reading the banner.
Yeah.
The other part about the monthly newsletter. Monthly newsletter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Find it on the website.
Yeah. Well, and this is also.
See, he would be one to
There's
look
a problem with that.
Yeah.
Information.
Right.
To say what was in the Dove last.
Right. And so this is like, and yes, I just had a conversation this morning about website. It's also figuring out who's the website for. Is website for visitors or is it for parishioners? And then how sort of how information filled do you make a website? So there are all these sorts of things. And I'm glad you said that.
The whole thing I'm teaching how to, because I went to one of their seminars on websites,
Yeah.
and they have all these, age breakdowns and things, and you got to have this for this. You can't make a website that does all the things, but it is very much generational, and how you get that information out, and
It is
tough.
interesting. I've looked at several this week because my sister wants me to help a friend of hers find a parish. Don't ask me how I got that, but nonetheless, so I went on and looked, and I'm like, wow! You can tell the flavor of the parish just by what they stress, what they put out there.
And then you get to one that has just a horrible website, and you're just like, okay, did they not get the memo how important this is? Did somebody skip something here?
Right.
But
you can't get from A to B. Yeah.
Putting a good website can be really expensive. Or, you have the parishioner that can do it after hours that doesn't always have the after hours to do it, and then you get into all that.
Right. And that is this to this to that. That, we're going to get, Bob to do it. Well, eventually Bob's not going to be able to handle it. And this is kind of what we're going through. Yeah. Not no good or bad, it's just indifferent. It's just like, okay,
it's just too much for that kind of
me and his name is Joe. We can't handle it anymore. And so it's it's just so there's so many.
So communication is going to be
it's always huge,
and I don't think it will. I think it will always be at the top of the list.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you all so much for joining us and for this conversation about Holy Comforter. You're always welcome to join us on Sundays at 8 and 10:30. And send me an email, jimmy@holycomforterspring.org. I would love to hear your questions and comments. We will be back in 2 weeks for our series, Jesus Loves Me, This I Know, for the Prayer Book Tells Me. So it'll be really great. Thank you.